None of the content on this or any episode of the Kratom Science Podcast, Kratom Science Journal Club, or on any page of KratomScience.com is intended, nor should it be considered, medical claims or medical advice. This is the Kratom Science Journal Club with Dr. Jonathan Cachet, neuroscientist and expert in psychopharmacology. In each episode, we discuss an article in a peer-reviewed journal. I'm your host, Brian Gallagher, blog and social media writer for KratomScience.com, your source for all things Kratom. Goats. Kratom with the goats.
The goats.
This is really interesting. So it's called The Effects of Supplementing Finishing Goats with Mitragyna speciosa Corth Leaf Powder on Growth Performance, Hematological Parameters, Carcass Composition, and Meat Quality. So they fed a bunch of goats Kratom. And this is a study.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It's a study out of Thailand, published in a journal called Animals. And it was a team of animal scientists, agricultural scientists, there was a botanist on there. And I'll just read, quote, "The objective of the study was to see how dried Mitragyna speciosa Corth leaves, which they called DKTL, dried kratom leaves, affected growth, hematological parameters, carcass characteristics, muscle chemical composition, and fatty acid profile in finishing goats." And they were a breed of goats that said it was half native Thai and half Boer goats. Now, Boer goats are like huge meat goats. They're just like full of muscle.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what native Thai goats look like. I tried to Google it really quick, but I couldn't find them. But they're kind of like a crossbreed. Studying 20 goats. And 5 of them received no kratom, 5 of them received, it was really weird levels. It was 5 received a daily supplementation of 2.22, 4.44, and 6.66 grams per goat per day of dried kratom leaves for 90 days. I'm just wondering why they picked 2.22, 4.44, 6.66.
Yeah, it must have something to do with the other mixtures that they were feeding them.
Mm-hmm. And this is in with their feed. It's pretty interesting because, I mean, they're ruminants, so they eat green food, and goats, because I studied this a little bit because I was a farmer for 7 years from 2004 to 2011, and I was looking into possibly raising goats for meat, so I did a little research on this before, but very little, because I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to be expensive, and who's going to buy goat meat? I don't know. But in general, like, we know we have, like, chickens and cows, and they are super bred to produce meat. I think goats, even though these Boer goats are super muscular and they are bred specifically for meat, they're not as Frankenstein level as chickens, pigs, and cows are here. I think they're still raised on pasture mostly, but green food is good for all that's why grass-fed beef tastes better. There's pastured pigs, and their meat always tastes better. And this is a study in Thailand where kratom's all over the place. My first thought was, well, Thailand now has legal kratom. They're going to be selling it to human beings, so even if this was good for goats, I wonder if it would be efficient to feed them, since it's going to be a crop for human beings pretty soon. It might be really expensive.
Yeah, prioritized for getting put into feedstock. Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
In the introduction, it said, the world's rapidly growing population, along with widespread opinion that animal products are advantageous to human health, has increased the demand for animal products dramatically, which I don't think it's necessarily a good thing. I think it's because of the wealth in China and that region. A lot of people are becoming middle class, and it comes with everything that a middle class culture wants, like air conditioning and more meat and cars and stuff like that, which is not necessarily good for the environment. They eat goat meat more in other parts of the world than we do here, but I think we're starting to eat more of it over here.
I was really surprised at the number of different things that they measured, to say that if it was improving goat meat quality or not. So, they were looking at the average effect on body weight, on average daily gain, on feed conversion ratio, but also the carcass composition, the meat pH, the meat color, and there were several saturated fats or unsaturated fats that they were looking at, like different protein contents. And I didn't realize that much thought, and I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't necessarily, not aware of, the food sciences where they're doing these types of analyses.
The one thing I did raise was chickens. They're talking about the fatty acids, the temperature, color, and physical properties, and all this stuff. I did raise meat chickens, but, I didn't get into... Feed conversion was a big one, though, because that's really where the overhead is versus the meat. Like, if they're in-house, I raised mine on pasture, so you lose a lot of the feed conversion because they're just getting more exercise. But the meat actually tastes better when they get some kind of green food supplementation and outside stuff. However, the type of chickens I was raising was the standard meat chickens. So when they're indoors, I could get them down to about a 3-to-1 conversion ratio. But when they're indoors, they get them down to like 2-to-1. So for every 2 pounds of feed, you get a pound of meat, which is insanely good. I'm not exactly sure what goats do, but with this supplementation, they definitely want to measure like feed conversion ratio, because that's the main thing. I think that's probably the main thing that farmers look at, because they got to buy a truckload of feed. They got to sell this much meat, and they have to cover their costs. So if anything makes the feed conversion ratio better, like a supplement like Kratom or anything else, they will. And for ruminants, they eat a lot of grass and hay, so if you have a good pasture, you're going to want them to get as many nutrients as they can on your pasture that you grow, because that's basically, it's not exactly free, but that's basically a free supplement. So you want to have healthy pasture, but for people who don't, a lot of they need to use more nutritional supplements and the actual feed. And
so for chickens, the feed conversion ratio you said is like a good number for indoor is what?
2-to-1. They've gotten it down to 2-to-1. Mine was about 3 or 4-to-1 when I raised them on pasture, because they get more exercise, so they're burning more calories. But it also makes for like a leaner meat and a better tasting meat. So, but I also had to sell them for a lot more because I wasn't able to get the lower price on feed that a bulk buy would get. I could buy like a ton or 2 tons at a time, which wasn't, I didn't get a price break from a feed store, but so I had to charge more for them because I was on a small scale. But 2-to-1, because when they're indoors, they have nowhere to go, they have no sunlight, they're not getting exercise, they're crammed kind of together, so they don't move a lot. But that converts to a better feed conversion ratio because they're just gaining weight.
Yeah, so it looks like for the goats, it's an FCR of around 5.5. But then across all of the 4 different treatment groups, it stayed relatively the same. So at least for this particular one, feed conversion ratio, it doesn't look like Kratom necessarily increased or decreased the effects there. Kratom supplementation showed no detrimental effects on body weight, the average daily consumed, no feed conversion ratio, carcass composition, meat pH, or meat color. So giving the Kratom didn't result in any negative effects there. So like they weren't smaller, they didn't have to eat more. The conversion ratio is relatively the same. How does meat pH come into play in terms of meat's taste? Do you know? Are you aware?
No, I mean, I wasn't aware of it, but I think in this study,
initial pH and temperature were measured at the 12th and 13 ribs.
Of course, it's hard to search for pH in a document. Meat pH. After a corpse has been chilled, some of the language they use in this, I think it's maybe a translation thing because they said the goats were murdered in a slaughterhouse. We usually just say slaughtered. I think murder in English means a more sinister kind of meaning. But if you're like a hardcore vegan, then it is murder to you too. But it was interesting to see it in this study. But after the corpse had been chilled, the pH and temperature were tested at the same site. pH of muscle after slaughter is one of the most important factors affecting meat quality since it impacts tenderness, color, and water retention capacity. Okay, there it is. Lactic acid production and accumulation accompany the depletion of muscle glycogen reserves. Furthermore, rigor mortis occurs in sheep and goat carcasses when the pH of the longest muscle is between 5.6 and 5.8. So it really affects the quality of meat after slaughter, so that's why they're testing for pH.
Yeah, and it looks like also like just how well it will store, how long it will keep. So like if the pH is too low or it's too acidic, then it could like rip through the proteins in the, of the meat, and then, it couldn't be stored for very much longer. Okay, that's interesting. I was trying to figure out if like for good meat, do you want it to have a high or low pH? But I think necessarily it's just that in order to store meat or more meat to be just as good after it's been stored, you want it to have a balanced pH, I think is probably the target.
Yeah, and then they talked about color, which is obviously like if it looks gray, people aren't going to buy it at the marketplace. That's important.
That's so interesting because you hear that come up too with like salmon, and so like if you're looking at agri-equal like food fisheries, right? One of the problems they would have with keeping the salmon in these large groups to harvest them was that the meat would no longer be like pink or bright red. It would turn gray. And while, I guess I'm just sort of like skeptical whether or not, like, would I rather have meat that looks the right color because it's been injected with a dye, or would I rather just have it be the color that it is? And I guess I've never been exposed to meat that doesn't have the dye in it. So I'm always just by default. And I guess if I, was at the grocery store and there were a few packages there and one of them was really gray versus the ones that are red, I guess you can't deny the fact that the visual indicators of quality are not going to change.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is.
And it's funny, like, even with things like tomatoes, we used to sell ugly tomatoes for cheaper because people would just pick all the nice-looking ones. Even though the ugly ones, like, we were just at a cookout at my wife's cousin's on Sunday. One of their neighbors was giving away tomatoes, and there's this big ugly tomato, but it's delicious. They were just giving away,
right.
but like, yeah, people will pick based on, especially with meat, I think, because you think if you see something you're not used to, it just goes off in your head that it's bad, even though it's dressed up and colored and dyed,
right,
wax on apples and whatnot.
It's important.
Yeah.
So okay, didn't change the meat color, didn't change the meat pH, so we're all good there.
So this isn't the first study for kratom supplementing in goat feed. There's been a couple others. It says, quote, "It has been discovered that these products can lower ammonia nitrogen, blood urea nitrogen, cholesterol, LDL, and triglyceride levels." LDL is the bad cholesterol, while increasing high-density lipoprotein levels, which is the good cholesterol, probably owing to high levels of mitragynine or secondary metabolites, which are assumed to be induced by direct inhibition of cholesterol, LDL, and triglyceride synthesis in the liver. Now I'm getting into the woods of not really knowing what they're talking about. But
yeah, so there have been a lot, like I know that cholesterol always comes up in a lot of the like subreddits where people want to know, is kratom affecting my cholesterol levels? I don't necessarily know what the general consensus is.
I think there have been studies, some of the Malaysian studies where they take about 200 people and then they just give them blood tests who use kratom. And I think it's, in general, the cholesterol improved among the kratom users, but who knows if that's because they eat less. they have a better diet, or because they're using kratom because they have physical labor jobs that helps them with anyway. So if they're exercising a lot, they would have better cholesterol. But it seems as though in goats, I mean, every goat probably has the same basic lifestyle. It seems like it would indicate that it does actually do something with lowering cholesterol. Has like a Lipitor-like effect, maybe.
Yeah, I'm looking at table 10 now. So the effects of kratom leaf supplements on plasma parameters for fattening goats. And so this is all of the cholesterol percentages here. And so, in the tables, they have T0 is the control group. So, or T1 is not getting any of any cholesterol. So yeah, it does look like they're either held the same or reduced, except for the triglycerides. It looks like triglycerides could potentially increase, but for everything else,
they're always. It looks like triglycerides are actually much higher in the goats that got the most kratom. Total.
But I guess I would say too that the p-value is not significant there, so it doesn't look like, at least statistically, none of the parameters looking at cholesterol were different between the controls and the kratom supplemented goats, which I guess, that's why, I guess that sort of points to the consensus that we're just discussing, and that there's not really conclusive evidence that kratom will push cholesterol levels either way.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the sample size in both the human studies and in this, where there was 20 goats, is just not enough, and it's not a stark enough difference. But I think with some of these, they kind of want them to be consistent. Like if it's not lowering feed conversion, then that's not necessarily bad. I'll just read it. However, because red meat has a low proportion of beneficial polyunsaturated fatty acids and is high in saturated fatty acids, some consumers believe it is undesirable. And I think
the meat is undesirable, not the fatty acids. And I'm glad we moved on to fatty acids, because that's where some of the significant differences were actually found.
Well, in the former studies, they cited it seemed to promote good cholesterol over bad cholesterol. And then also they're trying to get it to promote good fats over saturated fats. Pretty sure like grass-fed beef and also like buffalo versus cow. I know it's leaner, but I don't know if the actual fat is this type of polyunsaturated fat versus saturated fat. I imagine it would be.
I'm just looking at table 7 now here, the supplement effects of kratom leaf supplement on fatty acid profiles. That for 14 carbon long chains, the kratom supplement decreased for the 18. But I would assume that the fatty acid profile does have a significant effect on the taste of the meat.
Yeah, and which is weird. I mean, I haven't eaten enough goat to know. I've had it a couple times, but it seems like it would be leaner to begin with. So you'd wonder maybe, if they wouldn't, because I knew a couple farmers that they did like pasture raised pigs, but they also finished them on corn, so they would develop kind of a layer of fat and have flavor at the end. And they wouldn't be so, lean, and that's just how they've always done them. They weren't even like new. They were like a traditional old school generation after generation farmers, and they were just like, this is how we all. It's not a new sustainable thing for us. This is how our family always did them. But I'm wondering about that with goats. Like, would they even want them to be super lean if they already are kind of lean in general? Because they're probably closer to venison.
And what you just read too about red meat. So because red meat is low in beneficial polyunsaturated fatty acids and is high in saturated fatty acids, some people believe that makes red meat undesirable. So like compared to a chicken, which is already a leaner meat, the red meat is not as preferable, or at least that's the idea. It looks like for the polyunsaturated, it decreased. I'm just looking at the significant values. It's wild because the differences we're talking about here are not that great. So like polyunsaturated fatty acids in the controls was 11.81, whereas in the highest dose of kratom was 10.01. So that's like a difference in 1 gram per day. Or no, that's not 1 gram per day, percentages of total fatty acids. So 12% versus 10% total polyunsaturated. So I guess it does lead to a decrease. So that's good. You're decreasing what people would consider as the non-beneficial fatty acids.
Yeah, that's where it seems like the kratom supplementation helped. And it also said their average daily gain of the people with the goats with the higher, the 4.4 and 6.6 levels was increased. Average daily gain, I'll read it. This quote, this might be due to the fact that DKTL, dried kratom leaves, includes bioactive compounds with a variety of modes of action on digestive processes. The majority of bioactive compounds discovered in herbs increase bile acid synthesis and excretion in liver. In the small intestine, bile is required for fat breakdown and absorption. Kratom polyphenols work as enzyme inducers, binding to enzymes and activating them for a variety of metabolic functions in the body, including digestion and nutrition absorption. So in this, they're kind of hypothesizing that the increase in average daily gain was from kratom aiding in the digestive process, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So they actually gained more weight. But then there was another thing that they said. It's in the same paragraph, but it says the lowest response was observed at 6.66 grams per day of kratom supplementation. Because I think the average daily gain was highest at the 4.44, and then it went down. However, on the table, it's hard to find. I was kind of confused by this part. But they said this could be linked to the kratom diet's lower palpability compared to controlled diets. Low feed intake, I think it was. The reasons for lower feed intake remain unexplained in the current inquiry, and to slightly reduce nutritional digestibility observed when kratom concentrates were raised over the threshold of 4.44. It's thought to include anti-nutritional compounds such as mitragynine, which might affect animal digestion, metabolism, and nutrient absorption. This could be linked to the lower palpability, which means the goats didn't like how the kratom tasted.
Yeah, so when we get to the higher concentration, the 6.66, their weight gain was less overall. And there's presumably, they're suggesting maybe that's because it started to affect the taste of their feed.
Yeah. So goats are just like us in that kratom tastes terrible to them.
I've fed goats. We've raised goats a few times, and I'll tell you what, when that
they
food
eat
comes
everything.
Out, it just gets mowed. Yeah, it just gets mowed down.
They'll eat your clothes, and I had friends that had goats, and they had goats, and they let them. They would put them in sections of their woods where they want to trim the bottoms, all the bottoms of the trees. With every kind of tree, where it's up to how far they could climb up on there. So goats will eat everything. So that might be wrong. And I was kind of trying to. I don't know. I guess yeah. I forget which table it was, but it showed that at 6.66, then there was what was it, a weight gain thing? T4.
So percentage of body weight and then weight gain. So you can see on table 3, weight gain. You can see that it's sort of stays the same between control and the lowest group, and then you get to the middle group that the 4.44, and that's the highest. The weight gain was 14 kilograms versus 12 kilograms seen in the other ones. Whereas, and then the highest dosage was at 13 kilograms, 13.5.
It also said the effects of DKTL, that's dried kratom leaves, on carcass width and longissimus, which is longissimus muscle area, were substantial. And longissimus, I think, is maybe backstrap.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I looked at that.
So that's probably the best cut of goats, like just like it is with deer. So they had, yeah, the ones that took the kratom had more width and more back muscle area, which is interesting.
I'm looking at that because it looks like at least for tables 5 and table 5, where they have this sort of like percentage of hind and overall size of the carcass, so carcass composition, the loins, hind legs, rack, shoulder, doesn't necessarily look like any of those are statistically significant that I'm seeing, but there is some variation that occurred there. It's weird that they don't have the longimus muscle in there. It's just like loins, hind leg,
Oh, that's me.
rack. So no, I don't see on the width of the carcass, but it looks like overall, so they were looking at the longimus muscle, but they did look at they did break down all of the carcasses into their actual like cuts, then weighed them, and then looked at that weight as a percentage of the total carcass weight. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any real statistical significance in any of those measures.
So it looks like their conclusion is in this research, DKTL supplementation showed no detrimental impacts on body weight, average daily gain, feed conversion ratio, carcass composition, meat pH or meat color, as compared to control after kratom treatment, the hot carcass weight, longissimus muscle area, fatty acid, MUFA, I don't even know what these things mean, and protein content all increased, while SFA, saturated fatty acid, and ether extract decreased. As a consequence, mitraginal leaf supplementation as a feed additive for small ruminant production, which would, I guess, be goats and sheep, may become a feasible option in the future. So it's kind of a net positive in general. And if anybody,
it seems like on the measures that were important and what they were particularly looking at was these fatty acids. So the MUFA is mono unsaturated fatty acids.
Okay,
so those are like the good saturated fats. And so if we're increasing the amount of the good unsaturated fats, then that seems like a positive overall for the meat in general.
Yeah, it'll be like a leaner meat with better fat. I mean, that's what I need to eat is if I do, because I try to stay away from pork and beef just to keep my cholesterol down. But I take Lipitor, so hey, modern solution.
Well, well, I think this is sort of to pull it back to where we started to a certain extent. Like the question then becomes: are these differences significant enough for there to be a difference in like the the marketing of the meat? And so I would say, and this is just my interpretation after reading this today, that I don't think that we're going to see kratom supplemented goat meat on the shelves, like distinguished from regular goat meat anytime soon. It seems like there was a marginal increase in quality indicators, so increasing the unsaturated fatty acids, the overall weight of the longimus muscle area increased. But so then the question becomes, does the cost of including kratom in their diet, does that justify, is there an increased cost with doing that? And does that justify then like switching to a feed where kratom is included at all the time?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would for like the average farmer. And plus, since kratom is going to be a commodity in Thailand that's sold to human beings, and it's already in the grocery stores actually there. I just transcribed my interview with Pascal Tangway, who's he's originally Canadian, but he's like a drug policy expert, lives in Thailand. Mm-hmm. But he was talking about how it's technically it's decriminalized, but they also can now sell it in grocery stores in the produce section. You can get a few leaves for a certain amount. So it's basically legalized, and when it's going to be sold to humans as as what it is, what we use it for, then I don't think farmers are going to be quick to trying to rely on it for their goat regimen. It'd be like feeding goats marijuana.
Well, that's
here.
what I was just going to bring
Yeah.
up, because that has come up a lot in the hemp space, where so you're growing these massive hemp plants, you're getting all the flowers off, and you're extracting cannabinoids from them. Those go to humans, but you're still left with like all of the stalks, all of the stems, like
Yeah.
all of this leftover plant biomass. And one of the uses for that could be as a supplement in a feedstock. So like transferring
Yeah.
over all of that plant biomass material and including it into animal feed. In this case, I don't necessarily, that might be beneficial. The metragenine content is much lower in the non-mature leaves, but there still could be a benefit, I think. And they were talking about how in the ruminants there's there's a fermentation process that happens, and whether or not they can utilize the products or like inputs or outputs from that fermentation process. And it sounds like it helps with that. So maybe including just the like sort of leftover biomass from the process of making kratom for human consumption could then be supplemented and pushed into feedstock, just sort of like how they're looking at with hemp. Like that,
Yeah.
that seems to me to be what makes the most sense here. It's not necessarily that like the benefits are so worthwhile that we're going to see some diversion of kratom leaves from human products over to animal feed. It doesn't necessarily seem like we're there yet.
Yeah. And another question I had was, did the goats get a buzz off of the kratom? Like, did they
Worth
change?
asking.
Did their behavior change? And that's definitely not included in here. I was kind of looking for that, like did their behavior change at all? And I also know deer like kratom because those bastards just got my plant again. They ate it. They ate my plant that's been outside since it's been hot and humid here. It's been outside, and for a while they didn't touch it, and then they got it a couple months ago, and then I got all new leaf growth, and I'm like, okay, I gotta put a fence around it, and I just haven't done it, and then I was just about to do it last night. There's a few leaves left on there, but it grew back way better. Like, they did me a favor the first time, so maybe it's gonna grow back again.
Yeah. Well, and they're getting, so like the highest dose, they're getting 6 grams per day, and the average live weight of them was about 35 kilograms. So,
Yeah.
we're still talking about a dose that it's 6 grams, not kilograms. So it's like 6 grams given over 35,000 grams of body weight. That's still like a pretty low dose. I mean, not even a percentage of their body weight. It's 0.00.
Well, yeah, but
0.
yeah, if I take a 4-gram dose, I'll feel it of dry kratom. I'll feel it. So I'm wondering, crazily.
Well, I mean, it would if they were looking at it, right? So like total distance traveled, like exploratory behavior, just general levels of activity could have increased or decreased. I wonder if this group, like if in the previous paper where they were looking at using kratom as a supplement for goat feed, if behavior was noted there. Like in this report, it seems just primarily about the sort of chemical composition of the meat and the meat quality at the end, not necessarily the goat behavior.
I mean, I guess they didn't go nuts, or that would have definitely been a factor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If something went crazy, it definitely at least would have been mentioned,
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a better question for the farmer if there were any like subtle changes in the actual. I mean, the scientists, obviously these goats were on a science farm, but like a farmer that has raised goats for years and years, probably be the guy to ask if he noticed any behavioral changes.
It's interesting. I was just doing a quick Google to see if there were any studies looking at like supplementation of cows or other domesticated farm animals, and nothing came up. But there is a blog post at the top that says, "Can goats eat kratom leaf?"
I guess I assume these are all in like Thailand or somewhere where there's plenty of kratom available.
I was going to say, that's where it makes the most sense in that they have kratom around. So if they can use it and there's a beneficial effect, why not? But
although there's plenty of vendors selling kratom for like $50 a kilo if any farmer wants to feed their animals kratom that's full of lead and contaminants. It might be cheap enough though to supplement your feed with the prices that some of these guys are selling them, but
if there's like lead or other heavy metals that like, especially like the heavy metal where that will get sort of integrated into the muscle, and then it could potentially fail downstream. Because of the risk. So I didn't look at the other one, but just briefly, what did you see on the serotonin syndrome?
Yeah, this was a case report. It was called Possible Serotonin Syndrome in a Patient Taking Kratom and Multiple Serotonergic Agents. Very good title. It wasn't. They could have called it Kratom-Induced Serotonin Syndrome, it's a very good title. And I just had the abstract, so I didn't have the full study, but it seems like it's a concern about kratom interactions with other drugs, which is a good concern. And there was also recently a paper about anesthesiology, which I got into a Reddit discussion about this. Somebody said, well, I'm going for colonoscopy. Should I tell them I use kratom? And I said, yeah, because for colonoscopies, they sometimes use fentanyl, and we know that can interact with kratom. And if you're going under, that's kind of enough that, or if you're being twilighted, that's enough that you should probably tell your doctor, even though the doctor probably wouldn't know much about it anyway, and they would say, just don't do it. Okay, so this guy was 63 years old. He came in with, I'll read the list. Diaphoresis, which I looked it up, excessive abnormal sweating, flushing, aphasia. Aphasia is the loss of ability to understand or express speech caused by brain damage. Confusion, dysarthria, which is muscles used for speech are weak and you have difficulty controlling them. Right facial droop, oral temperature of 103.2. Initial differential diagnosis included acute ischemic stroke and bacterial ischemic. Okay. Yeah. And bacterial meningitis. Despite partial treatment with broad-spectrum antibiotic symptoms persisted, and subsequent physical exam noted hyperflexia, which is over-responsive body reflexes, clonus, which is involuntary muscle contractions, tremors, and a temperature of 106. So this guy was in bad shape, basically. He was not only on kratom, but he was also on bupropion,
a lot of meds.
Five different other meds, and they call them nootropic meds. So they suspected serotonin syndrome, and then they gave him a couple of other meds, and some of his symptoms cleared up. Yeah, so basically this guy shouldn't have taken kratom. Okay, so this is their conclusion, which I think is pretty good. Risk of serotonin syndrome with multiple serotonergic agents is well known. Kratom is metabolized by cytochrome P40 isozymes 3A4, 2C9, and 2D6, and exhibits inhibition at those enzymes in addition to 1A2. Pharmacokinetic interactions of kratom with prescription serotonergic agents metabolized through these isozymes has the potential to increase systemic exposure of serotonin, possibly leading to serotonin syndrome. That's probably most likely what happened. I think they did their homework, and kratom does interact with these enzymes, these P450 enzymes, which I think is why it may have contributed to a lot of these quote-unquote kratom-related deaths where fentanyl was involved. It competes for the enzymes with other medications, and there's a lot of medications that are processed through the P3A4.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's a 63-year-old male who's taking 5 different meds that are all related to like serotonin levels. So they're all anxiety, depression related. And the last one there, the Z drug, is an antipsychotic. So like, I think the general warning here is that if you're taking 5 different drugs daily, all related to like brain chemistry, then maybe you want to just like tread lightly if you're going to add a 6th, because serotonin syndrome can really mess you up. I mean, they teach us that in psychopharm, where like people would be taking these antidepressants and then they go out clubbing one night and take like an ecstasy or a Molly. And when the serotonin levels get too high, you do start developing all of these, excessive sweating, flushing, confusion, some of which can lead to, substantial damage in like critical areas of the brain. So yeah, I mean, if you're taking any prescription drugs that modify brain chemistry, you probably want to, venture with caution before adding any other additional ones to that, especially if it's involved in serotonin signaling, because serotonin syndrome can be a real issue.
I just hope what we're doing informs some people of Kratom works on a lot of different. They didn't mention the activity at the serotonergic receptors or by the kratom alkaloids, which we've looked at in a lot of papers in the past. And I only have the abstract to this, so they might have mentioned it in the full article. It's like you gotta be careful, and the drug interaction thing's the one that's probably the most risky of doing kratom. If you're just doing kratom, especially if you're 63 and you have a whole, you have one of those really big Monday through Friday pill regimen things and lots of vitamins and things. And I feel like this guy should have told his doctor, if you have the option, don't create him a secret from your doctor. I mean, for one thing, it's not illegal, and for another thing, I don't think doctors are allowed to tell the police if you.
Yeah. Well, anytime you're considering ingesting some sort of like psychoactive compound, if you're stacking compounds that affect the same chemicals, then you want to proceed with caution.
I just put an article out today about Tom Segura keeps talking about kratom on Your Mom's House.
I noticed that. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I did an article about, and he is taking an entire shot of like liquid extract before a workout. And he's like, I'm getting geeked out on kratom. And so that was my, when I put it on Twitter today, I said, Tom Segura gets geeked out on kratom. And somebody said rightly, I understand the concern that should we be using that type of language? I'm like, but that's probably an accurate description for a newbie to be like diving in head first with a whole shot of liquid extract, where even the companies suggest 1 or 2 drops in your tea or something, or to boost your regular kratom dose. I'm like, he probably feels pretty good, but I hope he's not still on pain pills for his slam dunk injuries, because that could be. He's looking it up, and they landed on a rehab clinic for information, which is always. Here's all the possible side effects that have ever been listed in any case report, which bone pain was a new one. I've never heard that before. I don't even know. I've never heard of that other than like osteoporosis, bone pain. So that was, although it was like Eleanor Health, and they purport to be a scientific evidence-based source of rehab. So it wasn't that bad. The article wasn't that bad, but some of the side effects were hallucinations, of course, was in there. So I had to talk about that in my article about Segura. But we actually went and saw him in Pittsburgh. He was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Your Mom's House listener. I like how you use the terms fed smoker level doses.
Yes.
And then also recommended his friend Bert Chrysler.
So
this is certainly not the first time that I'm in that comedy podcast circle. I've heard it on Fighter and the Kid from Brendan a few times as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. Brendan Schaub.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan Cachet. Check him out on social media at GetJCachet. You can like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff, but comment if something stuck out to you that you're interested in or that we were wrong about. Anywhere you listen to these podcasts. The music is Captain Big Wheel. The song is Moonrunner. The Creative Science Journal Club is produced by me, Brian Gallagher, for KratomScience.com. Take care.